Welcome to the Revenue Builders Podcast, a weekly show featuring B2B sales leaders and executives. Hosted by five-time CRO John McMahon and Force Management co-founder John Kaplan, the show goes behind the scenes with the people who have been there, done that, and seen the results. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe, rate, and review the show to help us reach more people. Revenue Builders is brought to you by Force Management. We help companies improve sales performance, executing the growth strategy at the point of sale. Find us at forcemanagement.com. Enjoy today's episode.
Welcome to another episode of Revenue Builders. I'm John Kaplan, and I'm joined with my good friend, five-time CRO, and author of the wildly successful book, The Qualified Sales Leader, John McMahon. Johnny, how are you?
Cap, doing great today. Super excited to talk about AI.
Yeah, I am too, buddy. And we're going to tackle the exploding world of AI today. And, you know, you've heard Johnny and I talk about AI almost in every recent episode that we've been doing in one shape or form with every guest. And there's so many conversations going on today around this topic that we thought it would be a good idea to just back it up a bit and try to rise above the noise and speak with an expert to help us get grounded. And thanks to one of our great listeners making a suggestion, we found a perfect guest. And that guest is Dr. Devavrat Shah, who's the CEO and co-founder of Ikigai Labs. He is a professor of AI and decisions at MIT, where he's been teaching since 2005. Dev successfully combines academia and entrepreneurship. He founded Academic Unit in Statistics and Data Science at MIT in 2016, where he served as its founding director till 2020. He co-founded Select, a predictive analytics platform for retailers, which he sold to Nike. Dev holds a bachelor and PhD in computer science from Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay and Stanford University, respectively. He is a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences and distinguished alumni at his alma mater, Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay. Let's jump in. So we're calling this episode Cutting Through the Noise, Understanding AI Through History and Practical Application. And we're joined with the great Dr. Dev Shah. And Dr. Shah would love to, I think we're going to use Dev because you're going to call us Mac and Cap. So Dev, we'd love to get started around just a basic education around how long's AI been around? Where did it come from? Tell us a little bit about the history.
Absolutely. First of all, Cap and Mac, thanks for having me here. I think AI, statistics, machine learning, data science, for me, all of those terms have intimate relationship, and they have been around for a very long time. One of the books that I've written a few years ago, in which I was trying to find one of the oldest reference, and I found it in 1985 after Christ, to Al-Hazan, born in Al-Basra in modern-day Iraq, responsible for pinhole camera, spoke about how do we think about the human vision. And that's where these methods called nearest neighbor, like matching patterns, came. And I think that was one of the earliest references, if not before. Now, in a modern version of AI or artificial intelligence, the term was stated officially by some of my colleagues at MIT, Marvin Minsky and his collaborator in the late 1960s. And the mission, as it was stated, is saying all the things that humans can do, machines should be able to do, and hopefully a little better. And if we think from that perspective, humans primarily do two things really well. One is mind, and second is muscle. Muscle is like mechanistic stuff. Mind is like learning from data, information. Mechanistic stuff like robotics, self-driving car, and all that. And then learning that from data science, statistics, machine learning, all of that has come together really, really interestingly over last 4 to 5 decades. And, it's a very interesting day today because we got the first Nobel Prize of AI in physics, as it was announced earlier today. So I think
it was announced today.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we are definitely at an interesting change, if I may call it, in a broader journey of science.
Yeah. So your point is, it's been around for a long, long time. The concept has been around a long, long time, and it was interesting when I read the Nobel Prize being given to Hinton, and there was another gentleman that was given to, yeah, and they were talking about how the concept has been building off each other for decades, if not centuries, like you've been talking about. I'd love to dig into some of the differences in, let's just talk about some, common terminology. I love your analogy that you're using here with, mind and muscle, and the mind is about learning the data, and the muscle is about, you called it mechanistic automation, which is awesome. Help us with some of these terms like large language models, machine learning, neural networks. I think like those three, or deep learning, those 3 or 4, I think are almost in every article we read. Is there anything significant about understanding, what those mean for our audience?
Absolutely. So maybe first quick response to large language model, neural networks, deep learning, then coming to machine learning and broadly. So large language models are a class of models that learn and extract patterns from text data so that then they can interact with you to provide specific question answers. Very much text models. They are a type of deep learning model. That is a deep learning applied to a large amount of text data with specific architecture called transformers. And that's how the large language models have come into play with using effectively internet's data. And neural networks, large language models are a special type of neural network. Deep learning is an art and science of training neural networks. And all of these belong to traditionally machine learning field. Now, one can ask the question, okay, so machine learning, AI, statistics, data science, what happened, right? So maybe now I'll step back a little and maybe ask a common question, that is, and going back to learning from data, right? In my mind, one way to think about all of these things is goal has been, how do you extract information, insights from data, and then use those insights to make decisions?
Yeah.
Basically the mission, that's basically the goal. And if we think from that as a mission and goal, there are roughly 3 things that needs to be done. 1, I give you a collection of data, structured, unstructured, structured, let's say, tables, numbers, unstructured, text, images, audio. You want to make sense of it. That is, understand data, extract key essential pattern from it. Okay? This goes with the term what people call unsupervised learning. Large amount of natural language processing, like large language model, is all part of that. Similarly, computer vision, which tries to understand the image part, is all part of that.
Like facial recognition and stuff like that. That's, yeah.
Absolutely. And then, just speech recognition. All of that is part of broadly unstructured data, making sense of data, understanding data, in addition to numbers, of course. Then once you have a good understanding of it, you can use that to build what people call models. Sometimes understanding itself builds a model that naturally help you. Sometimes you have to do extra work to do prediction, saying that, well, I understand this is the text. Is it a positive text or a negative text? I understand that, this is how your, this beautiful smartwatch is measuring your heart rate. Are you walking or are you sitting? That kind of thing, what people call is supervised learning or prediction. The first part where we're trying to extract patterns from data and no real goal, but just understand it, that's called unsupervised learning. statisticians since, centuries, if not at least a century, have been thinking of viewing the data itself as what people call probability distribution. So that you give me 5 data points, from there I will learn a distribution so that I can generate a new data point that looks like those 5 data points. That's a generative view of the data, which now in a modern world we call generative AI. But in traditional statistical view, we would call sampling. In other world, we would call simulation. So all of them are brothers and sisters of each other. It's just a different context. So again, understanding structure and patterns in data, using it to make predictive models, and then finally, using those predictive models to make decisions. This is where very complex things like reinforcement learning come, very simple things like optimization comes, and everything in between. And then one thing that people still have not woken up in a broader, let's call it broader aspect, broader popular press, which we must account for as we move into this world of data-driven, AI-driven world: causal inference, attribution, certain things are happening because there's a reason. Those are like a beautiful 2014 article in New England Journal of Medicine, and this is hilarious. The article concluded that countries that have people eating a lot of chocolates win a lot of Nobel Prize. Okay. And you say, well, that sounds a little too much. Well, there's a hidden variable called wealth that is both leading people to eat a lot of chocolates and get better opportunity to actually win Nobel Prize. And so one has to think carefully about it. And that's what causal inference does: attribution. Okay. So again.
And Dev, the attribution, is that what, yesterday I was listening to the news and COO from OpenAI was on, and they introduced their O1 model, which he said could reason. Was he essentially talking about attribution also?
So in part, reason is definitely what one would call as an attribution, that is explain the phenomena, the mechanism that leads to an outcome. And those understanding that is crucial to doing attribution, crucial part of causal inference. But at times when you don't have observation, like the example I was mentioning where people had only access to Nobel Prize and chocolate eating, how do you still try to understand and argue that maybe there is some hidden variable that might be impacting it? Sometimes data can help, and doing that is what I would call causal inference. It requires us to go way beyond machine learning view of the world. Now I'm getting nuances, but absolutely that's.
I like this. Because when I'm reading this and I'm hearing about this, I'm kind of like, I feel like we went to understanding data to understanding what data could tell us, to now have machine learning capability that could make that understanding at a higher level than a human. Is kind of like the evolution for me. Is that a safe way of saying it?
Cap, definitely that's a interesting way to put it. What I feel one of the biggest value that will come here is, let's suppose hypothetically we got a machine that can think like our brain based on the pattern recognition. Let's assume intuition is out. Let's assume that emotions are out. Then what machines could do is, without getting tired, and have a brain that is way bigger than one person. And it's that collaboration, I think that gain that comes from there is just massive, and we don't know yet what all those things can do.
And that's the big dilemma. That's the big dilemma for everybody.
Absolutely.
And I heard another explanation that I really like is that, like a teacher and a student can answer, the teacher can say, that's not correct. This is the correct answer. But they can do that. Machines can do that at a faster capability and a learning capability higher than the capability of a human today. So that learning, the time that it takes to learn, examine, learn, change, update is really the fascination, and it's the speed of it, correct?
Absolutely. And once it's learned, it's already learned. It never disappears. It's like, for example, I not to say anything about CapU and MacU, but I grow old and then sort of, some of my learning becomes unlearning. Machine won't happen.
Don't even try it, Dev. You got what we call 100-pound brain. Max probably got an 80-pound brain, and mine's somewhere south of that. So you got a 100-pound brain, no doubt.
Dev, what if I had a model that was I built a model similar to your model, but we had both of the models argue with each other? Could there be an outcome that would be preferable from the two arguing with each other over a certain subject or certain subjects?
It's a brilliant question, Mac. So in a sense, what we are saying is that, is it okay for two really, really bright individuals to exist in isolation versus those two really bright individuals come and work together?
Well, let's say Einstein was speaking to Newton and they were arguing about certain, subjects that are way beyond like my capability. I'm wondering, could you have two AI models of certain that were set based upon certain expertise arguing with each other to see what the outcome would be?
I think here is what history suggests. History suggests that whenever there are smart people surrounded by other smart people, more smartness comes out.
Yeah.
No surprise that Socrates had unbelievable students like Aristotle and others, right? Some of the best schools gather a more and more exciting intellectual growth because of the people. Okay. I think MIT is great as an institution where I am and I'm a beneficiary of. And it's not I who make the institution great. It's the people around me who make institution great and hopefully make my life much, much better than otherwise. Now, that fundamentally has a following premise, that we all bring something different than others. So if the two models have access to, let's say, historical data that are different from each other, then I strongly believe this sort of conversation would lead to something much, much better. But if they were the same, I don't know. I don't know how to sort of, how I would at least objectively make a guess.
Right. They'd have to be based upon, like you said, different historical data.
Absolutely.
Well, what about the thinking of, so for me, it's kind of like, me as a human, I'm often looking for the answer. I want to know unequivocally that that's the right answer. I do that a lot with the people that manage my money, with the people that I talk about a forecast with, that I want to know the answer. Is it really that? Is it the quest for the answer, or is it the quest for the most probable answer with interpretation? Where are we today, and where are we going with that?
I think fantastic point. I feel that sort of traditionally AI system, machine learning system, predictive system, decision systems have all tried to get one answer. And over time, we all have learned, and that's my big thesis, is that explainability is the key. And explainability has to be explainable and usable for individuals, humans. It's like if I told you that my forecast is 27.93 because this feature is this and that feature is that and that feature is that. And you say, okay, that sounds interesting. But on the other hand, if I said, well, Cap, I'm going to recommend you Goodfellas because you watched Godfather, and Mac, who seemed to have a similar interest as you, when he watched Godfather, he liked Goodfellas, so hence. On the other hand, I'll say, well, Cap, I'm going to recommend you Barbie because you watched Godfather. You might say, hey, that sounds like an interesting movie, but highly unlikely that quotes and quotes correlation makes sense. And really, it's that provenance, if I may call it, of prediction, provenance of AI recommendation, provenance of AI decisions is crucial for us to make sense of it.
And how do you get the explanation piece? Where does the explanation piece come in? Because you said the explainability. How does that factor in?
So again, there are multiple schools and schools of thought of it. I have a school of thought on that. but I have a thesis on that. I truly believe in it, is going back to the easiest way for me to explain what my Wednesday would be tomorrow is by going back and looking at, okay, this is not a special thing, but going back and looking at all the Tuesdays in past when I have had a conversation like illustrious folks like Cap you and Mac you, okay? And then look at the days after and what did I do? Those would be, in a sense, form the right set of patterns that match to what I have in context. I will provide that to you and then help you understand this is the reason why I'm telling you. It's like, I'm going to tell you prediction that every day at 8:05, I'm going to have an espresso because I do that every day. And that's in sort of an easier example. So it's about identifying patterns that fit the current context in which I'm providing you recommendation, prediction, and then providing access to them, providing attribution, and providing sort of traceability of it.
So for our listeners, where we're at right now is expect to be implementing explainability and further understanding than what can be provided now by AI and machine learning, correct? Always have that expectation.
Absolutely. And again, I think sort of ask for it. It's a hard thing, but it's needed. So you see, Google searches are easy for us to search and trust because when the search comes, there's a page that comes. Versus when you get an answer on OpenAI, for example, ChatGPT, and an answer came, but where? Why? And that sort of creates a little bit of confusion because there is no traceability.
Great example.
But couldn't this cause like an issue if, Cap, to your point, I want an answer. So let's say we're using AI for sales and you want an answer from the sales rep and from the system based upon their sales calls that they made. Could be the data that was recorded between the sales rep and the customer. And you might get an answer from that, but that could be the wrong answer because there's this whole other part called intuition. So you might tell me, well, hey, I used the AI system to tell me that this is the answer. But me as a sales rep, I'm telling you, that's the wrong answer because my intuition says something different than what the customer said. So it could be dangerous just to use AI for, let's say, an answer on sales calls when you have humans involved and intuition plays a big part.
Actually, Mac, I would love to pick up on that thread.
That's a question, by the way. That's a statement and formulated as a question.
Okay, so this is other part of my strong thesis is that experts need to be part of the loop, not out of the loop, because with AI, exception is a norm, not exception. Okay. And if AI is going to be in service of us as the decision makers, as the humans, then AI must be able to interact with us. Okay. One part is this chatbot nature of it. Another part is the interpretability, explainability of it. And then the third part is actually us providing input back to the AI. It's like just the way machine is a predictor, you and I are also predictors. And we should be able to put things together rather than not, right? It's like kind of jumping a little bit to a very much real life example, right? Where it's typical for many, if not all, modern companies where they're thinking about consumption-based forecasting, right? CFO's office has a great aggregated information that make fantastic forecast at aggregate level. But the moment you go down, sort of suddenly forecast becomes patchy. And then you say, let's look at bottoms up. But again, when you're making bottoms up, that's again the same thing, you know. I might say, as you're picking on your example, I might say it's 20K, and then you might say something else. And all are right answers. You know, nobody's really trying to fool the system, but because there's only so much data, question is, how do you use these two information together to, in a sense, reconcile the structure? Because we know that bottoms up must add up to the top down, and there is enough information across. So how do you stitch it together? And doing that is where AI can help. This is where collaboration with experts, i.e. sales reps, for example, working with other experts like CFOs working with AI together can make the most out of it. It's like 1 + 1 = 11 rather than 1 + 1 = 2.
You know what I like about this conversation? Let's go back to Mac's comment about intuition. I think one of the problems that we have in business is Mac understands what that means for him. He has a stomach, he has a gut feel, he has intuition. Really what he has is a series of experiences in certain environments and certain circumstances. And I think, so I love this conversation of AI. If it can help me simplify Mac's intuition and help me gain knowledge out of what Mac uses for intuition to use it for the populace because we understand the circumstances, the emotions, the data that was present at the time. I think it's just fascinating. And it takes some of the ambiguity out, like words like grit and intuition and the it factor, what have you. I just think as a society, I think we're going to get closer and closer to real, what was happening when you had that situation, what was actually happening. And I'd much rather live in a world where I could make decisions based upon my historical understanding and others' understanding of what happened. So I think it's fascinating.
Absolutely.
All right. So you talked a little bit about consumption pricing. I wanted to just stay there for a second, Johnny. Almost every single podcast we've had lately, you've asked every single one of our guests about consumption modeling and consumption pricing. Dev, I'd like to just have a conversation about that. What do you think a lot of companies some have done it, and a lot of companies are considering it because they're trying to meet the customer wherever they are. What are some of the ideas, understandings, challenges you think are presented right now with consumption pricing, and what could AI help with in the future on that?
Fantastic. So I think there are two parts. One is about consumption pricing as a concept. And again, I must sort of confess here is that my expertise there are limited. But let me sort of contextualize in the context of AI itself, because lots of modern AI pricing is around this word called token-based API calls, very much along the lines of consumption. Okay? And that's where one is trying to think through how does one think about AI as a consumption-based products rather than AI as a traditional, let's say, value-based product or traditional SaaS pricing, which is licensing per seat, et cetera, right? Now, I think it's a great framework because one way I like to think about, we like to think about in my role as a leader of company Ikigai, right, is that we think of data as a massive data cube. That's how world of data warehouses, world of databases have been thinking about it, right? It's like different axes you have, tables and all of that. It's like a massive cube. For us, it's like all time series, different types of data, how much time in history, what is the future forecast. And each of the forecasted data point is like a prediction query and all that. And that provides a volume of work you are doing, volume of compute you are doing. That's how sort of, let's say, entire cloud as a compute has been sort of structured. And what that has done well, in my mind, successfully, is allowed people to understand what is it that they're getting into. They can sort of actually just compute. There is a very honest exchange that's there. Now, as that honest exchange happens in terms of overall consumption, it's relatively easier for people to forecast what their future revenues would look like in that consumption model for sitting from a CFO's office. However, if you are selling those deals as an enterprise sales, as a sales rep in a small region, in a small location or small part, small channel, then forecasting those things becomes hard because here is you're forecasting on one hand, it's like a smooth water. On the other hand, you're forecasting when umbrellas are purchased. It's like two very different type of forecasting problems. And this shows up in many, many different places. Think of manufacturing. I'm manufacturing, let's say, a material, okay? That material I need to manufacture because when my customers come, every customer comes and places 1 ton of order once every quarter or so. There are a few customers, choppy orders, but that collectively forms into 27 tons of production this quarter and 28 tons of order next quarter. But who? I don't know. So the mechanics are exactly like that. Easy to forecast overall volume, very, very difficult to forecast where and how, but they are all related. And this is where AI can really help. Because if we look at these things in isolation, it will be very hard. But if we start looking at, let's say, sales reps as a cohorts, now we can learn from them each other. Okay? So here are the one type of sales rep, here is another type of sales rep, here is one type of channel, here is another type of channels. And now we can actually start correcting in addition to data that you have in MedPick or whatnot. So I think there is a huge opportunity to actually empower organizations to work, with more trust rather than more finger pointing, if I may call it, with the help of AI. And I think that would be a good thing for everyone involved.
Johnny, what are your thoughts on this? I know a lot of questions.
Well, I mean, there's a lot. Yeah, AI could definitely help because there's a lot of parameters that go involved. There's the historical analysis of consumption by per customer. There's seasonality overall. There's seasonality of each individual customer and their business. There's the rep forecast. There's new bookings that are occurring. There's the timing of the new bookings. So there's so many different factors that go in. And to Dev's point, AI could help by the aggregation of all of that data in order to give you, as you said before, like almost the answer, predicting what the answer is going to be, whereas right now, that's a pretty hard task to do.
I was going to say, I almost feel like it's not possible without AI to effectively forecast the consumption business. I don't know how you would do that.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, you'd have to take all those factors plus, how well did it predict on the last quarter and how well is it going to predict this quarter? What's the margin of error? There's a whole bunch of parameters that are all involved in making that decision.
What do you think the ramifications are for valuations of companies, Johnny? Any thought? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but companies that are switching from, maybe an enterprise model to, subscription model to consumption model.
Well, that's the difficulty. They can see the quarter and they can announce what they're doing this quarter and that they beat the number. But then when they give a forecast, it says, we're not sure that we're going to beat, over the course of the next year. Down goes the stock.
As we evolve, what does your intuition tell you about the ability to call the ball for long-term forecast? I mean, I don't see how you can do it without AI.
With AI, that should get a lot better.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Dev. Let's talk about some of the other great possibilities. Forecasting's near and dear to the heart of our listeners for sure. Obviously, we're seeing huge, massive improvements in healthcare and enhanced efficiency, supply chain. All that stuff is just outstanding. Where do you see, the big opportunities for AI? Thinking about our audience that is going to be thinking about, is AI something that I go into? Is it AI, companies that I start to go into? Where do you think some of the great possibilities are? And where do you think some of the great work can be? What do you think is going to happen at MIT also for training people for jobs in the future? That was a loaded question. Sorry.
No worries. That's an excellent question. Gives me enough to chew on. So maybe I'll start with first part of the question. That is, what are the possibilities with AI? Now, again, going back to the basic premise is AI is about taking data and then using that data to extract insights and then using that insights to make decision. You go with that as a premise, that as a way of interpretation, then there are a few things that sort of are naturally doable. One is every software system that's out there, one way or the other, it collects its data in terms of its operations. Think of traditional database system. Okay. When it makes query and it runs it, it can be sort of run in more efficient manner if you start using its history. So that is an example of every software system where one can sort of bring a lot of utility, and that would have tremendous implications because, just the amount of software that's out there, amount of cloud compute that's there, that will drastically reduce in terms of our expenses, spending. Huge saving in terms of cost, but more importantly, in my mind, it will also be super, super useful for our environment because it's becoming a huge cost to us as sort of we are getting larger and larger cloud compute facilities available in the world. So to begin with, AI itself will help us with just the guts of it. Second is with AI, and now with more and more people's willingness to embrace it, what's going to happen is that the patterns that exist in the data, and I'm going to sort of pick up on Cap what you said earlier, right? It will be really, really nice if you could actually have a world in which you can actually look at the history, saying that in this context, what happened in past, if there was any information. So those patterns, whether they're patterns in unstructured form or a structured form, they will become available to individuals, which means that now as a clinical, even if I'm still getting my doctor to make a decision, at least my doctor would have the right sets of contexts available so that by mistake, because they're tired or by mistake, and again, no finger pointing here, it's just humans, those errors would disappear. They will have a better sort of aid instantly to do things better. Okay. So that will be the second part. And then the third part is that because of this advances with the interface that we have now, humans are going to be able to interact with the systems much, much better than before. So far, the basic premise has been that we design machines that are good to sort of talk to machines themselves, not humans. I'll give you a bad example. Like, I'm sure I have glasses and I have back pain. When I go to my orthopedic and ask for, the orthopedic asks for back pain, he'll say on scale 1 to 10 what it is. And I will say, I don't know. It's a pain. I go to optometrist and optometrist will ask, is this right or is that right? And I'll say, yeah, that is right. That's why our glasses work well, but our pain is not gone, right? I would say the first one is more like designed to talk to machine. The second one is more designed to humans. Now with AI, what's happening, more and more systems are becoming human friendly. And I think that means that a lot more sort of interfaces would be excellent. It would lead to all sorts of efficiency and growth mindset. And that's basically sort of what I think. Software.
I love that. I mean, when you think about it, Johnny and I have been talking about this, Mac and I have been talking about this to dip your toe in the water no matter what you're doing. You should be using AI tools. If you're listening, you should be using them for helping you with, I use like things like Grammarly and things like that help me just sound better. And, I'm not that great at grammar. And I think those are genius. I think about, tools that can help me understand how I'm using something today and how I could be better at using it. I think about in the old days, I used to, go on YouTube and try to figure out what are all the things I can be doing with this expensive iPhone and with the expensive iWatch, if for example, and a YouTube video would tell me, hey, did you know you could do this? And with new software, you could do that. Can I imagine a future where instantaneously I can be provided, hey, this week you used it this kind of way. If you had done this, or this, you could have had these types of efficiencies. So I just think, if you're built that way, this is really, really exciting time. Really exciting time. I know we're going to talk about some of the challenges and the counsel that you have to make sure that it's not used for bad intent. But I think there's a huge area of opportunity giving people more insight in how they're using something. Even in my car, Can I drive my car differently or better? Can I drive differently at different times and different gas mileages and different? I think all that is just huge. It's just going to be it's going to be awesome. Let's talk about.
You really don't want to bring up the way you drive, though, do you?
Well, we could have early alert signals, Johnny, to tell us we're going through a red light.
We don't need to go there, Dev. He's something to drive with.
I'm affectionately called Mr. Magoo by Mr. McMahon. Let's talk about some of the challenges. Deb, there's a lot of people out there talking about the dangers of AI and how much of it's hype, and where do you think the real concern should be placed?
I think there are two types of challenges that are real, right? One is its impact on workforce, okay? And the second one is AI's the need for governance, okay? In terms of workforce, like any other technology wave, three things are going to happen, right? Some people are going to lose job. All our jobs are going to change, and there'll be new jobs created. My hope, my true belief is that the new jobs created would compensate more than enough for the jobs that are lost. Okay, so that is just what's going to be. For everybody's job changing, and this is where everybody needs education, and education not to understand how to build AI system, but understand how to use AI system. And a very simple example I'll give you is that you go to a casino and I give you this crystal ball that says 51% chance that whatever you play, you win, okay, and make the money double, 49% chance you lose. You go with $100. Now with this, you say, I don't know if I'm going to win or lose. How do I use it? Well, that's a bad way to think about it. The right way to think about it is, okay, build a portfolio. Say, $50 I'm going to apply. I've got $100. Good chance I will win. Sometimes I'll lose. And that's okay. So at any point of time, half of your money you apply. With 51-49, instead of 10 to 12 chances, you will make quite a bit of money. Okay? And that's the right way to think about how do you use AI system to make planning. And so one has to just get educated around it a little. So that is one part. So yes, workforce is going to change. Be mindful. Don't be afraid to get upskilled. It is time. Second part is AI governance. And I think there are three pillars of that, right? One is whatever we do with AI, whether with internally or externally, it has to be going back to explainability so that people need to understand what it means. Two is data. Wherever data goes, data is your currency. Data is something by which it's like, I teach, that's my teaching. If somebody else is using that to sort of make money, I should be paid. Okay, so where the data is going, that needs to be tracked, managed, and provided enough, let's call it, guidance around it. And then finally, we have need of, for lack of a better word, aspects of regulation. And this regulation, in part, has to be, everybody's open about it, but one has to be thoughtful. Don't over-regulate, because that will sort of just stifle the innovation. And that's really, really bad. But at the same time, don't just leave it wild, wild west. So I think those are some of the things where we as a society are going to go through it. And some of these things are going to be hard. But my hope is it will come out better on the other side. If we give everybody enough chance in the process, I think everybody would thrive. Everybody would be economically happy. If we don't give everybody enough chance, then there'll be few people even getting richer. And I think that will be not a good thing.
Yeah, whoever owns the data owns the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Couldn't there be a danger in the future where people just assume that AI has given the right answer?
Yeah.
So as an example, maybe let's say AI existed in the time of Aristotle.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's saying the world is flat. And AI says the world is flat. And Aristotle starts preaching that the world is round. And everybody looks at AI and says, this guy's nuts, because everybody knows and AI knows that the world is flat. Isn't there some sort of danger there? Because AI will only be based upon the current reporting of scientific information, no real new information that pops up. Wouldn't it be drowned out by the existing information?
I think, Mac, excellent point. I love your example of Aristotle. I feel, not that we were there at the time of Aristotle, I'm pretty sure Aristotle, even without AI, had the same difficulty to convince the world that. However, I think jokes.
Well, you know my example, though. Maybe that's a bad example, but
Johnny, I think you're talking about the dependence upon AI and lack of critical human thinking. Like,
yeah, I'm talking about in the future.
Coming down.
Whereas you went back to saying you wanted the answer, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, I just want the answer. The AI system says that's the answer, so that's the answer. Anything against that, somebody's nuts here.
No, actually, you're absolutely right. So, jokes apart, though, I think whether it's a critical thinking or whether it's actually misinformation or just sort of monopolizing information, for lack of a better word, I think is a real danger. And I think for that reason, just the way news agencies, right? We need enough independent news sources. We need enough independent AI systems.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think this is where regulation policy needs to come in. When I was mentioning policy regulation, this was on top of my mind.
Okay.
Just the way in US, we have a very good regulation in my mind against monopolies for a good reason. I think something like this has to be.
And you're part of an AI ethics council that I think you might have been one of the founders of it. Could you just tell us a little bit about it? And I want to make sure we get into Ikigai Labs because let's talk about, what you're doing right now. It's really exciting. Tell us a little bit about the council.
Absolutely. So this is an AI council that we as an Ikigai, as a company, we have set it up. Okay. We are an AI company where we bring value to enterprises. Okay. And the goal is to help enterprises utilize their tabular time series data to do better forecasting, planning, and then sort of bring value to their workflows, whether it's a sales, supply chain, finances, etc. Okay. As we do that, one of the things that we know very clearly and we must be mindful of is that AI governance is going to be on people's mind. Okay. And for that reason, we must sort of allow ourselves thoughtfully think about sort of what AI governance needs to be. While laws will come, we need to be prepared for it right now. Otherwise, things like, everybody's going through in Europe, for example, around GDPR, or whether it's about unlearning, as people call it, we're going to be in the mess.
The law comes after the pain.
Yeah. So we might as well just think forward. And towards that, we've got some of the best of the AI minds and the lawyers and the political scientists and the social scientists together in one place where whatever we do is an open discussion. We bring our challenges to them. They provide us their thoughtful advice, and we publish the report out there for everybody's benefit, including ours. And we keep it an honest promise to them, saying that whatever we can, we will try to sort of actually incorporate into our product offering. And we will try our best. Again, it's a promise. It's not a legal contract signed, but again, it's for our good.
I love it. I love the initiative behind it. So thank you for doing that. I think it's going to lead to great ideas for future protection. Okay, Ikigai Labs. I want to make sure that we got you recommended from somebody in our audience, and I want to make sure that we get a chance to talk about Ikigai Labs. First of all, the name Ikigai. Tell us a little bit about it. You're the CEO of Ikigai Labs. Tell us what's the significance of the name, and then let's get into problems you solve and all the excitement around your company.
Absolutely. So Ikigai, as you know, a Japanese concept where your passion to what you are good at, to what good value that you can bring to the world, intersection of that. And for me, truly, that's what this company represents. That's what the mission of the company represents. I'm an AI professor. I sleep, breathe, think about how do I bring AI to the world. And within enterprise, where our focus is, I truly believe that an excellent value that can be brought is by focusing on their tabular time series data and helping people run their day-to-day things, which are effectively balancing acts, right? We always try to balance things, equations, supply, demand, this, that. How do you do that more efficiently? Or how do you think about growth of the business by balancing risk and reward? So really, that's what we have been trying to do there. And that's why it's my Ikigai. And that's why the name of the company.
I love that. I love that. And if somebody's just listening and they're like, well, tell me about some of the common problems that companies experience that they should think about Ikigai Labs for. Tell us about some of the common problems you guys are solving.
Absolutely. So I think from a functionality perspective, there are three classes of AI products that we've built. What I would call first and foremost and most crucial is forecasting. Forecasting then used for planning, which is the decision making. And to do these things really well, you have data that sits into multiple silos and bring it together. And we call, these are three AI products, not the model, just their products, they're full featured functional things. And it's what we call AI Cast for forecasting, AI Plan for planning, and AI Match for bringing data together. So those are the functionalities. Now, these functionalities help with all sorts of workflows that enterprise run on their tabular time series data, right? Every enterprise works on 4 or few more time series about the products that they sell, the sales from their customers, the finances, the people, something around marketing and more. All of them are tabular time series. The type of things they're trying to do is forecast demand, balance to supply. Supply is either a product, whether it's in the world of consumption, you're trying to forecast consumption, where the consumption is going to come, what the sales team would do, what my revenue look like, what my cash flow looks like, how do I sort of keep them in harmony with each other, what are my people's skills, what are the tasks that I can perform, how do I decide on my milestones of or roadmap, etc., etc. All of them are balancing act. This is where forecasting, planning, and bringing data together matters. And that in a nutshell is what we do. So again, our goal is very simple. Let's bring real value that is quantifiable. That is by bringing AI before and after you can tell, here is the amount of money that you have saved and here's the amount of additional money that you have made.
I love that. Is there any particular industries right now that are more available for your products and services? I don't know if that's the right way to say it. Is it targeted towards industries, or is anybody that has those 4 pillars a potential customer?
So as a small business, we are targeted in supply chain and BFSI. And when we go to supply chain, it's always about demand planning, supply planning of a product.
Makes sense.
Supply of coming from manufacturing side. And then we go to broadly BFSI, it's always starts with CFO's office to reconciling it with the sales and things in between. And that's where our focus is, and that's where we see a huge momentum, because that's where the largest of the pain points are. Now, of course, forecasting planning is crucial to a lot of other things. And my hope is that if people are listening to it and they're thinking about it, those are great places to focus on.
And Dev, outside of Ikigai Labs, what industry do you think is most going to be impacted by AI in general?
I think places where tabular time series data are there and the value one can bring. Those are the one parts of that. The other part,
just for the audience, tabular time series data. Could you just explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So think of a time series data as a data that's sort of gathered over time, which has structured in its time price of a stock market, right, or a ticker in a stock market. The consumption of a product in a consumption-based setting, right?
Performance over time.
Performance over time. And then tabular is information about it. Like this is the stock of Apple, and this is a stock of Google, and they have attributes about them as a company. These are tech companies and so on. And those information is very tabular in nature, and together they make this nice data cube virtually.
Perfect.
So that's thank you. And so that's one type of world. The other type of world would be where now with all the modern advances, especially around unstructured data, place where unstructured data has remained locked away from human interaction, I think that would unlock a ton of things. That's where the excitement that comes. Now, again, so how that excitement translates into real business value, I think that'll take some time. And it will have to be done use case by use case rather than just throwing a big hammer at it.
And where do you think the everyday consumer today hasn't really been, they're hearing AI everywhere they go, but they haven't truly been impacted yet in a major way. Sure, they might drive a Tesla and it's using some AI or using some other tools that are AI enabled. But where do you think the major impact is going to hit the general consumer? Where they're going to say, wow, okay, I got it.
I think in few parts, right? Again, so there'll be things that will happen in guts, so they may not see it, and that's okay. It's like sort of with cloud, all of our interactions have now become cloud-based, and we don't necessarily really notice that, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But then there is a part which is very much consumer-facing. For example, our ability to see a lot of videos online streaming, that's very much an impact outcome of the cloud infrastructure. So in similar way, with AI, what's going to happen is that all the consumer products are there. They're going to become much smarter. That is, think of right now, we navigate things. My hope is that the navigation, it's an end of the era. Everything should be just, I'm here, you ask me 10 questions and you give me the right answer that I'm looking for. I don't want to sort of do this, click here, click that, search this, search that. That needs to end. And I think that will sort of change the way our user interact or UX is.
That's going to make Cap very happy.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking about how amazing it is. And history kind of repeats itself. When you think about Apple, it was based upon the human experience. You know, the iPhone was based upon the human experience and like, what would a user do? You're talking about automating user experience and bringing that simplification to the user. I'm really excited about it. How do we get more information about Ikigai Labs? How do we find you? And then also, I think you were telling us in the pregame a little bit about there's courses for people to take to just get a basic understanding of AI as well, correct?
Absolutely. So I think best way to find us, especially for this audience, is my request to everyone is that if you're interested in learning about AI, not from how do you build AI solutions, but to know what AI can or cannot do perspective, then there are courses that we have put out for execs, for let's call it non-technical audience at academy.ikigailabs.io.
Awesome. We'll make sure we got a link to that. Yeah,
absolutely. And just take those courses. There's a contact us link. If you're interested, I'll be happy to have one-on-ones with some of you. And really, my hope is that you start your AI journey if you have not already started.
Love that. Well, we had a podcast a little while ago. We were talking about the innovator's dilemma. And we were talking with Mark Roberge from Stage 2 Capital, also an alum of MIT, where he was discussing Christensen's book. And I think you're familiar with the premise in there about sustaining and disruptive innovation. John Mack and I got a lot of comments back where we were talking about the whispers of, are you ready as a company? Are you innovating as a company? If you're not doing AI today, you're pretty much, if you're not on the train now, you better run fast to get on the train. I know you deal with this a lot for your executives. So it's kind of a follow-up from that podcast we did. a suggestion to people listening, executives listening, for companies that are trying to figure out how to bring AI into their company? Do you have kind of like a general framework of what you recommend on how to do that?
Here's what I would my 2 cents. Do 3 steps. First is identify where there is a will and where there is an opportunity to bring value of AI. Okay. Don't just rush into AI because it's cool. Because if the first time you bring AI into enterprise in your organization, if it fails, it's not successful, it will set you back for years.
Yeah.
So carefully choose where you go. Don't overthink. Spend 3 months and get that. That's first part. Once that's done, have internal champions who should be educated in terms of how to use AI, not about how to do AI, but how to use AI. And then do what I would call a quick proof of value, not proof of concept, proof of value. Concept is concept. I think it's a value that matters. And then from there, it'll be easy sitting after that within your organization.
I love that. Great framework.
Hey, Dev, can we go all the way back to why now? So if you're a layman, you know AI, I mean, even if you've been in software for a long time, you know AI's existed for a really long period of time. And then you watch as the cost of compute has dropped, the cost of data storage has dropped, for like what you mentioned, like pattern matching. But what happened that all of a sudden caused everyone to just start talking about AI? And just in the last year, it just seemed like it exploded with OpenAI and NVIDIA chips. And even though it's been sitting there for a long time in the background, what happened to just cause it to explode?
I think it's a fantastic
trigger. What was the trigger?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like you, I'm speculating. So with that in mind, feel the ChatGPT.
That's what I think too.
As a singular event, captured the what I would call fantasy of the world.
Overnight.
And this is a brilliant capturing of the entire popular attention. Now, because of that, what has happened is that now everybody has believed it, that it is the right thing to do. And because of that, now AI has become a budget item rather than AI being a discretionary item. And that now has completely changed the whole thing. And I'm sure if I think about it, in 1980s to 1990s, database systems must have gone through something like that. Okay, because forever people must have wondered that why do I need database infrastructure? And then suddenly, boom! Of course, you need database infrastructure.
Yes.
And I think something like that has happened here.
Yeah, good. I think it was ChatGPT really brought it to the attention of the common man, let's say. Yeah.
Amazing conversation. Dev, what did we miss that we were expected to talk about? Is there anything we missed?
Well, we missed a lot because we could keep him on here for hours. The guy's good.
You just agree to be our AI expert when come back and talk to us as this thing develops?
Absolutely. But first of all, I really appreciate Cap and Mac for having me here. This was a fun conversation. Again, it was exciting to see how sort of conversation from what we had planned to where it went, because it's been a lot more fun where it has gone. And happy to again engage with here as well as with your broader audience. And all I would say, again, I'm repeating myself, so apologies for that, but really it's time to just upskill a little around AI so that we are not left behind. And let's make sure to the extent possible, everybody has opportunity, because if the world is wealthy, we are wealthy. Otherwise, I think it's not the world we want to leave for our, let's say, next generation. So I think that will be my concluding.
That's a mic drop, Dev. If the world is wealthy, we're all wealthy.
Absolutely.
I love that. Mac.
Thank you, Dev. Really appreciate it. It was a really stimulating conversation. I know for me, I could keep asking you questions all day, but we don't have all day. So thank you so much. And hopefully we could have you back at some point.
Would love to. Thank you.
Amazing. And thank you all for listening to another episode of Revenue Builders.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to check us out at forcemanagement.com.